discuss a topic of national interest. We want to pray for the leadership of this country, give them wisdom, understanding, and discernment to administer the fortunes of this country very well, to the satisfaction of your glory. Father, we pray sincerely for the resource people and all gathered here, that indeed there will be a true manifestation of everything that they utter, because you are the only wise God, and anything that comes through them is from you and you alone. Father, we say, take glory, Father, take glory, Son, take glory, Holy Ghost. But Father, we stand as united Christians and nullify any activity of the devil that will try and cause any confusion among our midst. Father, we nullify it in the blood of Jesus. And we say, take absolute control. And at the end of the day, we say, glory, honor, and majesty unto your holy name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Tego. And I invite Ken Ashigwe, MD of the graphic group, to give us the welcome address. A round of applause to my former boss, Ken Ashigwe.
Thank you very much, Evans. Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, panelists, invited guests, my colleagues from the media, ladies and gentlemen. It's really an honor to have you here this morning for this breakfast meeting. As usual, this platform is an opportunity that offers us to be able to take Ghanaian challenges and come up with Ghanaian solutions for them. That has been the reason why we started this breakfast series. And throughout the period, we have been able to achieve that to a very large extent. It is one of the ways in which the paper graphic business that comes out on Tuesdays and then on Thursdays as an insert in the graphic delivers the mandate that we have, not just holding leadership to account, but also providing our readers with the quality content that they require to be able to take business and economic decisions. It offers us the opportunity to be able to interact directly with you and be able to extend what it is that we do in the paper onto other platforms like we're doing today. And we're grateful that we have had a partner like Stanbic Bank that also believes in thought leadership and believes in Ghana and believes that as Ghanaians, we would be able to fashion out what it is that we require to be able to transform our economy from the lower middle income status to become what we truly have the capacity to be able to do. And all the time when we do this, what we do in choosing our topics is to select a topic that within time is appropriate, a topic that it's also, that holds value for us as a country. So as we were starting this program, we had an interview on Multi-TV, and I think one of the questions that Mama V posed was apt, that what we are trying to do with today's gathering is to shape policy. And we want to shape policy directly by influencing what would happen to the budget. So this opportunity is given to all of us to be able to speak to the Minister for Agriculture, to be able to speak to the President, to be able to speak to Parliament, so that all of us can also contribute to where we want to see Ghana go. And so we chose a very topical topic. And the reason why we chose agriculture is because it employs majority of all of us. The 2015 Ghana Statistical Services Labor Force report gives more clarity to the question of the contribution of agriculture to employment in the country, where it indicates that, and I quote, skilled agriculture, forestry, fisheries workers constitute the largest occupational group, engaging over 2.9 million of the currently employed persons. Whereas in the rural localities, engagement in skilled agriculture, forestry, and fishery work is the main occupation of the employed, accounting for 2.5 million of the current employment, unquote. The 2014 report has made the same point, indicating that agriculture has been the key agent for employment generation. That year, with 43% of the employed population working as skilled agriculture and fishery workers. This is against the background that agriculture has been declining over the period, and we need to work and do whatever it is that we can do to be able to change this decline. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important as a country that we use all the resources that is available to us to be able to develop. The challenge that we face is that with our 92 Constitution, and what we have seen is that most of the time we keep over 50% of us on the sidelines. And most of the time it's only one group of people who are in power that really run things. And so the model that this graphic business Stanbic Bank breakfast series does is with the policymakers to bring the people from the two divides. It is not to say the other political parties are not important, but increasingly we've seen that 92, it's the NDC and NPP who have been in government. So we make sure that they are represented, and we also make sure that the other parties are also represented. So today, as we gather here, we're hoping that we will be able to fashion out solutions that would ensure that we move out of the situation where, as a country, and especially for those of us in Africa, though we might be contributing a lot to agriculture, when it comes to the value, we are milking very little. A typical example is cocoa. Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, the Asians, we do virtually everything when it comes to cocoa. But what do we get? We get less than 10% of the value that comes out of it. And it is our brothers and sisters in Europe and in America who take majority of that. How are we able to change that? So we're hoping that this conversation would move our agriculture from just being farming to a business that looks as the complete chain and is able to derive maximum value out of it. As I speak, I'm trying to farm, and I have a farm somewhere in Abutiakota. My vision is that in 30 years, we should be able to transform the village or the town of Abutiakota into a model town. We have done some of these things with cocoa, but with other crops, we have not been able to do that. How are we able to do that? So as we gather here this morning, I'm hoping that apart from the panel that will speak, all of us who are in the audience today would also ask the critical questions. We'll also be able to contribute to the way we can transform this industry of ours, the way we'll be able to bring all parties to bear on this. Those of us, our listeners who are also listening on Joy FM, and watching on multi-TV, you also can contribute by using the various channels to bring in your questions so that all of these questions can be put to our panelists, and your contributions can also contribute to what we do. Importantly, we also have Stanbic Bank, who are our partners, and we are happy that they are with us, and I'm hoping that they will continue to be with us so that in future we'll continue to be able to deliver this platform that will deal with Ghanaian problems. And we're also happy to be working with multimedia this time, and we hope that with this graphic business and multimedia, the issues that will come up today, it will not remain as a talk shop. Let us hold our policymakers to account. Let us hold private sector, the things that they say here, let us do the follow-up. Like the way we've done with Galamsey, that is beginning to show results. If we are able to follow through the things that are said by our policymakers, by our business people, as media, will be playing our role as the fourth estate of the realm. We'll be playing our constitutional mandate of holding leadership to account. I pray that you all enjoy your breakfast, and you enjoy this session, as they say in Miawezo.
Thank you very much, Ken. And today's program is brought to you by, of course, the graphic business, the graphic group itself. Remember to download the graphic news app. And also brought to you by Stanbic Bank, moving forward. Busy. Also, Labadi Beach Hotel, Joy 99.7 FM, and protocol services provided by Prosline Events. We are live on Joy 99.7 FM. We're also live on the JoyNews channel on Multi-TV. I want to now welcome Hassan Andani, who is the MD of Stanbic Bank, to also give us an address. A round of applause for Hassan Andani, please.
Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Deputy Minister, our distinguished panelists, and I'm happy they are all accomplished agri-professionals, our distinguished invited guests, and ladies and gentlemen. This is the price you pay when you have a platform, graphic, and Stanbic. Otherwise, what Ken said is fully endorsed by Stanbic Bank. But for us in Stanbic Bank, we say Africa is our home. We've been running a modern business in Africa for the past 156 years. Our group view is that Africa is our home, we drive her growth. We've been in Ghana, and we prosecuting the group agenda of driving Ghana's growth. And for us, anchoring the economy on agriculture is probably the lowest hanging fruit. It is something that is very dear to our hearts. We, in all of the countries we've operated in, particularly in the SADC zone, have run fantastic agribusinesses and seen this economy thrive and the individuals in the industry thrive. It's sad to note that in spite of the massive potential that exists in Ghana on agriculture, we still, till this date, grappling with the subject. And as I was saying earlier in the morning with our conversation at Multi-TV, agriculture is actually the confluence of all the sciences. And if we have to get it right, we've got to think in a very integrated manner and actually to redefine who is a farmer. I think we have to move away as a country from the pre-modern economy view of agriculture, where we simply just see a farmer tilling the land or following some animals. That is not agriculture. Agriculture is a complicated, integrated science that runs from the market all through research stations, all through manufacturing units, or to the farm. And this is what we expect the panelists today to avert our minds to, so that we can not only in the upcoming budget, but going forward, position agriculture, which for me, from where we stand, we don't need that much resource allocation anymore to be able to really push this economy forward. So on this note, we are truly proud to be part of this platform and look forward to very productive, fruitful discussions that will take this economy forward. Thank you very much for coming, and enjoy the morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Hassan Andani. Another round of applause for him, please. So what can we expect today? We are going to have 4 presentations. Great minds who've done this for a long time. When I talk about this, I'm talking about agriculture. A great theme there, securing the economy for agriculture, or with agriculture. And we can expect to hear from the Honorable Dr. Hassan Yakubu, former Deputy Minister of Agric. We can also expect to hear from Dr. Abu Sakara. We'll also hear from Edward Carraway with the General Agricultural Workers Union. Later on, you will get an opportunity to interact with these great guests that we've assembled here today. And we'll have a few question and answer sessions. And most importantly, beyond the auditorium here, we encourage those listening to us on Joy and those watching on the JoyNews channel to try as much as possible to also engage. Because agriculture employs, as Ken says, almost all of us. And so I can imagine there are thousands, possibly millions out there listening in many farming communities across the country who want to engage. Feel free to engage on our many social media platforms, and we'll try and get that into the conversation as we move forward. I want to now invite, I guess, the principal speaker for today as we move into the main session of today's event. He is the brain behind the Planting for Food and Jobs policy. He's been battling, call it a crisis, but he's been doing some great work on that with some tough questions he's had to fill over the last few months. I'm talking about the armyworm invasion. And I love speaking to him over the years because of his passion for agriculture. If there's one thing you cannot fault him for, is his enthusiasm for this great sector. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome the Agriculture Minister, Honorable Dr. Owusu Akoto, to give us his first presentation. A big round of applause, please. A big round of applause. He will start us off with his presentation, but let me quickly welcome the other key panel members who also join us on the main stage here as we proceed to the very important details of today's event. I also want to welcome Honorable Dr. Hassan Yakubu, former Deputy Minister of Agriculture, who is also here. I want to hear a big round of applause as the gentlemen make your way to the main stage. Thank you very much, Doc, for your time here on this great platform. I also want to welcome Dr. Abu Sakara, who is also here with us. He is a great man when it comes to the area of agriculture. We all know him with his presidential ambition, but he's not here to do politics. He's here to talk about agriculture. No, you can't. We have a fourth panel member who will join us also, Edward Caraway, General Secretary, Agricultural Workers Union, GAU, also joins us. Mr. Caraway, thank you very much for coming. So, ladies and gentlemen, your panel members are seated. We'll start, as I said earlier, with the Agric Minister, Honorable Dr. Owusu Akoto. Sir, I invite you, sir, to give us your presentation. A round of applause for him. Doc, I'm told you have to be seated whilst you give your presentation, so please, I'm going to hand you my microphone.
The Deputy Minister for Food and Agriculture, Honorable Odro, Member of Parliament for New Dubiasi, the former Deputy Minister of Agriculture, my colleague, Dr. Sakara, my hosts, Graphic Business and Stanbic Bank, and very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me show my appreciation to the hosts for giving me such a wonderful platform to expatiate on government's policy on agriculture. The vision of the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and the implementation of this policy by my ministry, led by myself. It is indeed a privilege that these two great institutions of Ghana have given me this platform to explain exactly what we are trying to do. And I think that the theme for today is very clear. That is the, let me see it again, securing the economy with agriculture. That captures exactly our belief. We believe that there's no security for the economy of Ghana without agriculture. that is the position of this government, that there's any effort to grow this economy without the foundation of agriculture is bound to fail. And I think the economic history of Ghana since independence clearly supports this hypothesis. And we are very much aware of that and are determined to turn the fortunes. There are all kinds of indicators who show that the agricultural economy of Ghana is faltering. All kinds of indicators, from very low productivity of our agriculture, whether it's maize or cocoa, in terms of yields per acre, yields per man day, any level, any measure of efficiency will tell you that agriculture in Ghana is very inefficient. Even by the standards of our own competitors, our neighbors in West Africa, we are highly inefficient. And that diagnosis should be the focus of turning around agriculture and thereby turning around transforming the economy of this country. If you take, for instance, maize, which for me is by far the most important crop in terms of food security. It's not cocoa, it's maize. Because it's the only crop, one of the very few, which is grown in all the four corners of this country, from north to south to east to west. It also happens to be the basis of our local dishes all around the country, whether you're in the northern part or the southern part of the country. Maize is for food security very, very important. And if I tell you that only 11% of maize farmers use improved seed, only 11% of maize farmers use improved seed. Some of you will be amazed by that statistic, but it is true that nearly 90% of our maize farmers still use the seeds which were handed over generations and generations and still continue to put some of this aside and use this in the next rainy season. And yet, the difference between the yield of these traditional seeds, less than 1 ton per hectare, and then if you compare it to what our own scientists have developed, the hybrids and the open pollinated. The open pollinated, at least you get 3 tons. So it means that more than 3 times just by changing the kind of seed the farmer is using. And if you look at the hybrids, it's even more. You're talking about 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 tons per hectare. So why, with the same effort, would the farmer be using this old seed which gives less than a ton? It's not because it's irrational. It's because the link between the seed that our brilliant scientists have discovered and are sitting on the shelves of the universities and our science laboratories, the link between that and the farmer is not there. And that's what we call extension. I inherited a ministry which has on its books 4,400 extension officers. If you ask me today how many are there, there are only 2,200. And out of that, 80% of them are going on pension in the next 2-3 years. It means the service has been totally annihilated. So the link between the farmer and the technology has been weakened to the point that it's not possible for him to make any impact. And the essential point of planting for food and jobs is basically to put into the hands of these small farmers that hybrid seed, that open pollinated seed, which can give him 3, 4, 5 times more yield than what he's doing now. So the planting for food and jobs is to transform the agricultural efficiency of our farmers. And we are doing that by a very steady process. One is to choose 5 pillars, what we call 5 pillars. They are double pillars we are talking about. One is the choice of crop. We are choosing maize. We chose maize, rice, soya, sorghum, and a selection of vegetables for this year. And out of the 5 million farmers and fishermen, we decided that we would just focus on 200,000 of them. While the central theme of planting for food and jobs is to appeal to everyone of the 28 million Ghanaians, including those who have been born today, to plant something. That's what we call planting for food and jobs. That throughout the population, everybody. And the reason is very simple. You go to gutters in Accra, Kumasi, Takoradi, Tamale. You go along the gutters. You see the seed of tomatoes growing, the seeds who have been discharged from kitchens and so on, and are in the gutters, have been lodged in a particular place. And even within the cement gutter, tomato is growing. The Lord, the good Lord, has given us a very fertile land. And we are sitting here importing food which our farmers grow. My statistics show that in 2007, Ghana spent $345 million US importing 8 food items produced by our farmers here. That figure had ballooned to $2.2 billion by 2015. And of that, $1.1 billion was rice. It's scary that we spend over $1 billion importing rice, which our farmers grow in Ghana, and which the valleys are in Ashanti, central region. We are not even talking about the huge potentials of the valleys in Katanga and Fufuso and so on in the northern sector. That we will spend that kind of money. Instead of using that money to build our roads, our infrastructure, our schools, our hospitals, we are using it, as we say in West Africa, to chop. That is an indictment on the agriculture of this country. And it's a reflection of the low efficiency that we are talking about. So we've chosen 5, and we've 5 crops, and we've focused on 200, but appealing to everybody to be part of it. The other pillars that we have in this activity is to do with the provision of seed, improved seed, fertilizers, to do with providing extension services, to do with providing marketing facilities for these surpluses that we anticipate are coming, and then to put all these on a platform by capturing everything by computer onto a platform. So that is the way we are going about it. And I must say, the 200,000 that we targeted this year is only a pilot. We are just going into a laboratory. So we are testing to see where the constraints are. And already, as I speak to you, all the efforts that we put in are being harvested. The North, the Upper East, Upper West, which are the latecomers, are almost on the point. In fact, I was with the president about 2 weeks ago in the North. You could see in some villages they've already harvested and the pile of the 100 kilogram bags of maize on the roadside, which beginning to sell. So we've learned a lot of lessons. The first lesson is to do with the limitation of the seed. My assumption all along has been that the seed, improved seed, will be available in any quantity that we were prepared to take. But no, the limited 200,000, we even struggled to get the seed to the extent that we had to go across the border to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, which is semi-desert, to bring seed into this country to supplement what our own seed industry could supply. That was the biggest constraint. And that delayed the whole process, especially in the major season in the south. When the rain started a bit early in April, we were not ready to provide a seed. We had to do a catch-up because of this constraint. And in the north, when having learned the lesson that we needed to do it, even getting the seeds from Burkina Faso was a bit of a struggle. So there was some lateness there. The fertilizer industry in this country proved beyond doubt that they are capable of meeting any challenge when it comes to agricultural inputs. They were there instantly to give us all the supplies that we needed for the farmers. And I took the decision that we're going to have the price that the farmers have to pay, because I wanted everybody to be included. I mean, most farmers are so poor, they cannot afford the price at the prevailing rate. So the landed price of 125, 128 Ghana cedis per bag, we decided that government would take half. And even the half that the farmer was supposed to pay, we said, no, the farmer can pay half of that half so that he can be supplied with the seed and the fertilizer, and then after the harvest, he pays the other half. So far, that has worked wonderfully. The Agricultural Development Bank and its rural banks that are working for them have been able to collect around the country the first 25%. And now that the harvest is coming, we expect that the other half will be paid by the farmers, because I'm sure with all the evidence around the country that the farmers are telling us, and which we have seen with our own eyes around the country, those who are privileged to be part of this year would want to be part of next year. And next year, we're extending the program from 200,000 targeted to 500,000 targeted. 500,000 farmers will be benefiting. And we see the attraction now, those laggards who were pussyfooting because they didn't know what we were doing. The evidence is there for their neighbors. Those who were reaping 15 bags are now doing 30, 40, 50 bags. And I can show you pictures from Central Region to Upper West to Upper East of what the farmers are saying. That is something that we think is progress, and we are going to build on it. But to build on it, even the 200,000 farmers, we couldn't supply them with the seeds. So how are we going to do that? We've had to target 3 major institutions in this country and give them the assignment to produce what we need. Because for the first time, maize, we were looking for 4,000 metric tons of improvement. We couldn't get it. And now, with the increase, we're expecting our requirement will be 9,000 metric tons. So how, even with the 3,000 or 4,000, if they couldn't provide, are they going to do the 9,000? We have tasked SARI in the north, the crop research in Kumasi, and of course, our own organization to provide the foundation seed to selected farmers. And I'm proud to say my colleague, Dr. Abu Sakara, is very much part of that effort to give us the quantities of seed that we need for next year, 2018.
Dr. Kutu, there's a time that was allotted. I'm pretty sure we're going to be exploring a number of the issues going forward when we get to the Q&A and the open discussion. So I want to give the next speaker an opportunity, if you don't mind, to also take it from where you left off. A round of applause for Dr. Efri for that. And I want to now invite the Dr. Hassan Yakubu, former Deputy Agri Minister, to also give his presentation. I understand that you have a PowerPoint that you want to be speaking to, so I invite you to take the, great, so that you could also communicate with us using that medium. A round of applause for the former Deputy Agri Minister.
Thank you very much, and Honorable Minister for Agriculture, that I know very well, Honorable Deputy Minister, Mr. Abu Sakara, presidential hopeful, and a very big time farmer. As Deputy Minister for Agri work, he was constantly in my office for us to discuss agri issues. My colleague panelists from GAO, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to say is simply what I think as a person, and as with respect to my background, what we think the situation can lead to proper agriculture to secure the economy as we all desire. So I'm Yakubu Alassan. I'm a research scientist at the CSR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. My office is in the head office here in Accra. Some people choose to introduce me as a former Deputy Minister for Agriculture, which is okay. I think that the importance of agriculture to our national economy cannot be overstated. And the second point I'd just like to make is that it will remain a strategic sector and sustain the economy for a very long time yet. So whoever thinks that agriculture may not be important someday must think again. It's never going to be the case for our country. I also want to note that Ghana's agriculture is also transitioning or maturing into agribusiness. And so any discussion from hence will have to take that on board, that we are transitioning from the agriculture farm to family table issue to agriculture to generate wealth and also employment. It also has to be noted that government is fast becoming an enabler, a coordinator, policy, regulation through its public agencies, and that most of the frontline value chain activities, including decisions that will affect those value chains, are to be done by individuals and private individuals and corporate bodies. The market will also have to be defined beyond the domestic market, because Ghana's agriculture is now becoming an integral part of the global agricultural system. And therefore, our actions locally must be impacted by global standards and trends. I also believe that as a country, I think we've done enough advocacy for the sector, and we must transition into real action to deliver tangibles. I think that there's no point discussing tangibles without acting to deliver those tangibles. And that, I believe that all of us, whether we are civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, faith-based institutions, etc., must see the sector moving forward in that light. The notion that the agri sector is a public sector baby, I believe, should change. And this is a very point I want to emphasize. The policy development, sustenance, and implementation must be supported by resourced by compelling political leadership at all times. Emphasis on at all times. I think that to leverage the economy using agriculture as an instrument, we need to consider scaling up in terms of quality products, because it is by increasing volumes that we can increase our market share and the benefits that come. It also will trigger our entrepreneurship and innovation attitudes. For instance, converting cassava into beer or cashew into brandy. And I think the benefits of employment, wealth creation, and distribution will be there for all to see. If this were to happen, and there was more demand on our products as a country, our value chains will become stable, very strong, and also very happy. It must also be the case that we have to target our market before we produce, because our food is our health and our wealth. We have a very sensitive consumer public now in terms of food quality, and even the process of arriving at the food is also something we need to consider in our production exercises. We have halal versus non-halal foods, organic, conventional, and of course, genetically engineered sources. In other words, the consumers are not just interested in food, but how the food was arrived at, because of their cultural beliefs or their status or emotional or health status. And then I think that science and technology must be something we should pay attention to, and I believe the Honorable Minister already said so. Because we have to produce more food with less resources, whether it is land, water, in terms of quality and quantity. And some time ago, we were supposed to produce in an environment that will be carefully exploited. Now we have to produce whilst restoring the environment, which is a huge challenge to our system. And so embracing science is a compelling imperative as a foundation for our agriculture. We need to do something about our infrastructure, and I believe the Minister already said so. I believe infrastructure as impacts directly on our agriculture, whether it is irrigation, warehousing, milling for rice, for instance, or appropriate structures to handle our fruits and vegetables, which are easier to perish or perishables. Mechanizing our cassava production system to generate regular supply of raw material is very important, because cassava is important for our breweries, our starch industry, pastry, and even the pharmaceutical industries. And so if we're to do our best to focus on mechanization, to help us a lot. We need to also be courageous with respect to our handling of land management systems, so that our land management system can be made friendly for agricultural investments. I still think that the concept of creating land banks must concern the public interest and support. A lot of the time, the people believe that government is to create land banks, but the lands belong to the public. So if the public don't support the government in that effort, obviously it will remain a concept for a long time yet. I also think that our agricultural education needs to be overhauled and given a new orientation. We need a paradigm shift from being trained to be an employee, such as myself, to being trained to become an employer. We need to retool our agricultural colleges, Honorable Minister, so that we can generate informed and knowledgeable agricultural extension workers and agribusiness entrepreneurs in themselves. Because the future Ghanaian farmer is not going to sit and wait for extension messages. He's going to be trainable in the management of agribusinesses. And if you look at the global trends, with respect to what I'm saying, there is no economy in the world, whether it is industrialized, middle income, liberal, centralized, or controlled, that has achieved food and nutrition security and even income security without science and technology. And Ghana will be no different, no matter how long it takes. I don't know whether there was a clip I wanted to show of global agricultural transitions. In the 1900s, the whole world engaged in traditional farming. In the 1960s, mechanization influenced global agriculture. In the 1970s, we had the Green Revolution. In the 2000s, we have the biotechnology era. And in the 21st century, we have the technology convergence era. This is a presentation, I'm quoting from a presentation that was made by the president of the Asia Biotechnology Center recently. Well, these transitions just show that as a country, we cannot stay where we are because we need to move forward. And the whole world is now at the technology convergence era. And therefore, Ghana has no option than to embrace technology convergence era, mainly because we are in the 21st century. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Dr. Hassan there. And we're going to quickly move on to our next presentation. And I'm pretty sure all of you are looking forward to the point where you can interact and ask your questions of what you just heard. Dr. Abu Sakara is next. I want to invite him to give his presentation, 5 minutes tops, and then we'll get Mr. Karewe to wrap it up for us. Then we will move into the session well, engaging our speakers. A round of applause for Dr. Abu Sakara, please.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, the hosts, I want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this breakfast session on how we secure our economy through agricultural transformation. I think this topic evokes the notion that we must first drive the economy through investments that transform agriculture itself, because unless agriculture itself transforms, it can hardly transform the economy. My comments are made from multiple perspectives. First, as a value chain operator myself. Secondly, as a development specialist over several years. And also as someone who's particularly interested in the impact of policy on our vision of where we want to be as a country as we pursue our common future. My first reaction to this topic was, what is new and what will be different this time round? Hopefully, as you can see from the enthusiasm of the Honourable Minister, who was sitting only on the first 5 inches of his chair at the front, that the renewed sense of urgency and also a greater commitment is already affecting a demonstrable change in attitudes towards agriculture and agribusiness. And I think that itself is an undefinable quality that has tremendous psychological impact. From previous engagements, we know and we are very conversant with what the challenges are. And I would ask the person handling the slides to begin rolling the slides on the cycle of agricultural investments as we speak, although I won't be speaking to the slides specifically, but at the end it will become self-evident. We know that we have challenges, or sometimes we call them impediments, sometimes we call them problems, but whatever they are, they're stopping us from getting to where we want to be. And these key challenges are basically in 4 key areas. The first is financial investments in agriculture. The second is human resources. The third, of course, is to do with productivity, which is related to infrastructure and transaction costs, etc. And then we have markets, the demand pool of markets and how they affect investments as a whole. And of course, the policy environment that molds that. So it stands to reason that if we have all these challenges, and we have talked about them for so long, and we have recommendations, several recommendations on what to do about it, what we lack is effective implementation of the solutions of the right kind that are relevant, realistic, and give results. In this regard, the context for implementation is important. And living on the mountaintop is not the same thing as climbing to the mountaintop. If you live on a mountaintop, your issues are different. If you're climbing to the mountaintop, your issues are different. And we need to see the context of how we transform our economy in this regard. I think we must first ask the difficult questions to help us point the way to more effective implementation of strategies and programs that aim to secure the economy through agricultural transformation or modernization, if you want. Is our agriculture for survival or just striving? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. If we want to transform the economy through agriculture, is that going to be the kind of agriculture which is just survival, or is it actually going to be a thriving agriculture? Of course, it has to be a thriving agriculture, which means our approach to it must be different. Will the farmers continue to be the same? Of course not. We cannot continue on the basis of having only small-scale farmers. There has to be that evolution from small to medium and large-scale commercial farmers. If that evolution is not taking place, then the transformation is not taking place. And that also determines how much we invest in each category of farmer. I think sometimes we focus only on the small-scale farmers to the exclusion of the medium and large commercial scale farmers. We also need to know what is the kind of funding that we need for agriculture. When you hear people talk, it's as if finance and funding are not important in agriculture. There's plenty of it which is available. Well, you can live in water and still die of thirst. You know, the key thing is the right kind of financing to go with the agricultural cycle. We all know that agriculture is a long-term investment, and we also know that the interest rates for agriculture need to be low. In fact, in many countries where agriculture is stable and efficient, etc., the interest rates are not more than two digits. But what do we see here? Often operating at 22%, 25% if you're lucky, and sometimes up to 35%. And if you're unlucky and you go into small, high interest lending, you can get up to 54%. I don't know what kind of crop you're growing, but I suspect it's highly illegal. Now, in this regard, we also need to look at sources of funding in terms of external financing. As we're thinking of this future of the economy, if we continue to neglect the medium and large-scale sector, and they cannot get the right kind of financing here, the only financing that will drive that is external foreign direct investment, which means that your medium and large-scale farmers are going to be mostly people from outside. Now, I'm not saying that that won't work, but the question is that the kind of agriculture that you want supporting your economy, which can flee if things get tough? So you need your own homegrown medium and large-scale commercial scale farmers, and they need to be linked to the local system. They cannot be dependent on donors and foreign direct investment only, because their access to that is more difficult. We also need to talk about whether that agriculture is going to be export dominated, or we are going to give some degree of importance to import substitution. And I listened very carefully to the Honorable Minister's presentation about the importation. And yet, there are many programs where when you go to them for financing, they say, oh no, we only deal with export crops. Well, what is the difference between export crops and the crops which you are importing, which are exporting money? You know? I don't get that. In fact, this one is even better because the demand is guaranteed. So I think we need to review the policies carefully around that. Coming back to the issues about our approach to this new economy based on agriculture, which I very much want to see. The public sector must go beyond empowering or creating an enabling environment to empowering private sector through more effective and efficient facilitation mechanisms that are relevant from relevant institutions. And I say this because it's all too easy to say, yeah, we're creating an enabling environment. But you know, enabling environment can mean anything. But empowering specific links in those value chains are important. And I think the example where the Honorable Minister talked about identifying the weak link between seed availability and seed production, addressing the actors, and providing the platform where that seed can be produced is a key example of how we can empower rather than simply enable, and I commend him in that regard. The prioritization of the gamut of issues which we consider important is also important in terms of their hierarchy of order. You can't simply address all issues at the same level of importance. We've talked about the critical limiting issues, financial. We've talked about technological, human resource markets and trade. And of course, national food security is also part of this, because food security, national security is contingent on food security and employment. So we have to think about it in the long term in that regard. On the financial side, I can easily say that money is the most expensive commodity constraining investments in agriculture in Ghana right now, and it is difficult and tortuous to access. It is the case simply because we don't have a separate window for agricultural lending. If you go to the governor's office, the central bank, they have only one window, and that is for commercial lending. You cannot ask the banks to continue to lend to a sector with such high risk, long-term demands, and when in fact, their source of money is short-term and high interest rates. What magic are you expecting them to perform? So we have to look at that fundamentally right from the source of the central bank. That is why it's important that we look at things like GESAL and how it comes on board to limit the risk on banks. But beyond just limiting the risks, we have to look at how we leverage other investments I'm sure Mr. Minister will tell you that he has several agricultural colleges, land and equipments and, many things which are under his ambit. Is there a way of leveraging these against a fund like GESAL, which will increase the amount of money that can be applied to specific investments?
Our time is...
Okay. Well, I will simply end. Let me conclude by I was going to deal with the technological and the other issues, but let me just say that from the point of view of anchoring agricultural productivity to increase its contribution to the economy, we have to remember one thing and one thing only, and it is something which I have remembered throughout my professional life. When I was employed, I was asked to come to the office to see Dr. Norman Borlaug, who was the Nobel Peace Laureate in Mexico, and he looked at me and he said, the problem with you young PhDs is that you think your sophisticated minds are what agriculture needs and what drives agriculture. But I want to tell you one thing before you go out to the world. He said, it is true that most farmers are not highly educated. It is also true that most small-scale farmers are illiterate. He says, but in my 40 years of working with small-scale farmers, I never met one who didn't know how to count money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abuk-Sakara. A round of applause for him. A lot of thought-provoking things and concepts he's introduced. We'll be interrogating a few of the things he said with our audience here. But let me quickly welcome Mr. Edward Kaiwe with the Agricultural Workers Union to also give us his presentation. That's the final one in the series. A round of applause for him. And then the floor will be open for interactions.
Good morning to you all. We are extremely happy to be invited to be part of this program and to hear that a trade union is invited to take part in a policy discussion certainly is not the usual thing. We are known to be causing strikes here and there, but it is not the case these days. And I would like to thank Graphic and Stanbic for identifying us. It means people listen. And to bring us to this forum, to also share our views. In March, when we decided to make a categorical statement on illegal mining, Graphic and other institutions took over it and ran with it. When you are asked to speak last, it's very difficult to speak. More importantly, if you have to speak after astute people like the Honorable Minister himself, an agric economist, a researcher, and then a consultant. But it could also be easy because they've said all the things that you don't need to say them again. But I want to posit this discussion on three main areas. You can't proceed into the future without knowing where you are coming from. Even if you don't know where you are going, you should know where you have come from. As a country, we are 60 years today. It tells us that 60 years back to date, why are we still talking about agriculture? None of us here knows that or would deny the fact that we've learned that agriculture is the bedrock of this country. Yet today, we are still what we are. It means there's something fundamentally wrong. We need to examine that. Two, we should be looking at the present policies. We have to ask ourselves, the policies we have today, will they take us to where we want to go to? If you want to travel to Kumasi and you choose to take a tractor, or these days the motorbikes, Motor King or whatever, how long will it take you to get there? We have to look at our current policies to see whether they will actually take us to where we have to get to. And in actual fact, it is not a choice that we can take 10 years to get to Kumasi. You may never get there. Because in the world today, no country has got the choice to decide when I should get to this point or not, because the world will move and leave you. Then the final point, we'll have to look at what is the future. What is the future we want to create for ourselves? It is not the future that someone expects of us or someone is telling us to be, but what do we want to be in future? So I'll posit my discussion on that. Of course, we have policy. And what is policy? Simply put, for some of us, we think that it's a documentary statement of intent which portrays reflections of preferences. What are our preferences? If we say we have policies, does the policy actually tell us our preference? And if it tells us our preference, then you can use that preference to know who we are. Whether we are people with vision, whether we are people of great minds, whether we are people of high expectation. Well, this particular discussion is not about policy in general, but we are talking about policy, state policies that all of us will hang on to get to where we have to get to. If you look at policies since independence, they delivered different results. And all those policies from every government has an ideological background. If we take the policy, the 7-year development plan, that indeed was, its emphasis was on a socialist model. State-led policy, and it was meant to establish a socialist economy. And what will that do? It simply proceeded to develop agriculture on modernizing agriculture and developing it using state farms, cooperatives, farms, and then agro-processing. Because the vision of the government at the time was to industrialize this country within a short period. So that is what they intended to do. Now, subsequent policies, if you take the policies from 1967 to 1971, they were characterized by private sector-led policies. They were driven by the private sector. And then by 1972 to 78, we had Operation Feed Yourself and Operation Feed Your Industry. That particular policy framework was to make Ghana self-reliant. And you could also realize that before 1983, all the policies that we had were basically price control, inputs and credit subsidies, obligatory credit allowances, heavy state involvement in production, distribution, and marketing. But today, since 1998, we had moved into another phase of agricultural policy. In 1998, for instance, we had the Accelerated Agricultural Growth and Development Strategy, and it was informed by Ghana's Vision 2020. You know, the objective of that policy was to get agriculture to grow at 6% of GDP every year. And it was also envisaged to get economic growth which will make Ghana a middle-income economy. Today, thank God, we have achieved the middle-income economy. I don't know whether it is in books, on paper, or in real terms, we are indeed a middle-income economy. But once you are men of and women of high knowledge and expertise, you can now decide that for yourself. Now, let's now look at the current policies. And I'm asking, are we putting old wine in new bottles? What is new about the current policies? One, we are implementing the current policies, as the minister has indicated, planting for food and jobs. In an unbridled, liberalized economy. And we're told that is in January when it was launched, probably, or stated at the at Legom, that is the New Year School, that is similar to Operation Feed Yourself and then Operation Feed Your Industry. But you see, similar policies implemented at different times. You can't use, so our strategy must change. It's not just about the fact that the policy is good, but it cannot grow as well as it did in the past, because by then we were living in a closed economy. Ghana, if you needed any import, you needed a license at the time, you needed quota to import whatever you had to import. Today, you don't need that. We were also in a military regime where the government can say, look, this is my country, and it happened. Today, you cannot do that. Now, the second thing we are seeing is we are implementing these new policies also in the midst of some treaties and protocols that we have signed onto. WTO. Can we disregard the tenets, the constraints within the WTO, and then say that this is our country, this is our policies? We also signed on to EPAs, the Economic Partnership Agreement. And since 2002, the ACP countries, African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries, started negotiating this. They indeed, up to now, particularly ECOWAS, we have not yet been able to have an ECOWAS-based policy. All is because there are challenges with it. Then we have limited space. Today, none of us should be deceived that governments have got the power to do what they want to do. No. You know, the policy space that is left for governments is limited. It is not like it was in the 1960s. It is not like it was in the 1970s, and so on. So when you are fashioning out policy today, you must take cognizance of that. So we ask ourselves, our current policies, have they taken account of that? Of course, it is easy, and excuse me, as a minister, as a president, as a policymaker, to say this is what we want to do. Yes, this is what we want to do, but you don't have that power as if you can bring down the moon and let it go back when you want it. Again, there's also limited market access, and what I will call fictitious market access. Production is a function of market. Nobody produces when you don't know where you are going to sell it. You either produce for consumption, you produce for the market, or you produce for both consumption and the market. So if you look at our policies today, planting for food and jobs is a production-based policy or program. Because even if we say it's a policy, for some of us, we have not seen the scope of the policy, the content of the policy. We have only been heard or been hearing what the policy looks like. Because I've not yet cited, of course, given where I am, maybe the journalists and other people who may have it, that this is a concrete document that we can take to critique.
Mr. Carey, because for the sake of time, you want to wrap it up so that we can, as we go into the conversation, you can highlight some of the points?
Okay. Now, the next thing to do That is, what is the future? Change of attitude. Government must change their attitude. Government should be receptive to ideas. There should be real consultation with credible and critical stakeholders. And then government and policymakers should consider views based on their content and not where the policies are coming from. Source of policy is not, ideas is not what we should consider, but the content of the ideas. Every policy should be anchored on a strong historical perspective, and that we should also develop policy from the right of the people and the duty of the government basis. I would like to thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Edward Carrier with the General Agricultural Workers Union.